welcome to Season 2, Episode 2 of the Church Tech 101 podcast. My name is Tim Hartman, and today's topic is do's and don'ts for your choir microphones. Well, I have been in more traditional churches for a really long time, and so I've been micing choirs for quite a while. And some of you don't have choirs very regularly. In fact, my church is just now resuming its choir post-COVID. But a lot of you have choirs for Christmas time or special events. And so it's something where you don't have permanent choir mics, but you just set them up in the right time for that event. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about some things that you can do for choir mics, or if you've never mic'd a choir before, some things that you should do and things that you should not avoid, that you should avoid rather. So I am always hesitant about talking about choir mics, and here's the reason why. A lot of churches, their PA system is so prone to feedback that they are using dynamic mics for almost everything. And as soon as we introduce a high gain choir mic in, you're going to have all kinds of feedback problems. And it really is system design and main speaker placement that are the issue, that you can't get enough feedback. And that's not something that you can just readily fix in most cases. So I want to kind of add that disclaimer to the front of choir miking. So the first one is, do use condenser microphones. Now, I have seen it before where people have tried to mic a choir with a dynamic microphone. And it is generally not very successful. With choir miking, you need to have a microphone that has lots of gain and lots of sensitivity for you to pick up a group of people effectively. And dynamic mics just physically can't do that well. That's not what they're designed to do. They're entirely passive. And so a condenser microphone is the ticket. Now, those come in all kinds of shapes and sizes. If you're putting up something temporary, I recommend using what I call pencil condensers, which are a long, narrow tube type tube-like microphone. They don't have tubes in them. But those are going to work really well for choirs. One of my favorite mics for choirs is a Shure SM81, and it's been around a really long time. And a lot of people don't use it because it's large physically, and they have aesthetic objections about it. It's really long, and it's silver and everything. But man, does it sound glorious on a choir. And I am a big fan of that. That's what I use when I do choirs in my own church. While we're on this subject, we're going to alternate between do's and don'ts. So here's my don't. Don't use omnidirectional microphones. So I had a good friend, and his music guy had gone on the interwebs, and he'd found, I need these omnidirectional microphones. But the problem was, it was a tutorial about how to record a choir. And I'll make this distinction here. When you go on YouTube and you look for information, you're going to get all kinds of opinions. If you ask a sound guy how to mic a choir, if you ask 10 sound guys how to mic a choir, you'd probably get 5 opinions. It's not as bad as a piano. If you ask 10 guys how to mic a piano, you're going to get 20 opinions. But let me say this. Don't use recording as your guide for live sound. So this guy bought some omnidirectional microphones and he put them on his choir. Boy, he could not understand why he was constantly getting feedback. And it's because omnidirectional microphones pick up from all directions. And so they're very clearly hearing the PA speakers and creating feedback loops instead of using directional microphones. So that's my plug. Use a cardioid condenser microphone for your choir miking. Now, that's a do and a don't. Let's use the 3-to-1 ratio. So what do I mean by this? Well, the common ratio that is kind of this industry standard, if we can say such a thing. Let's say your choir mic is 3 feet from your choir, okay? Your next choir mic over should be at least 9 feet from that microphone, so that the ratio of microphone distance to choir and microphone distance to microphone is 3-to-1. Now, this is going to make sure that your microphones don't double cover, because when we have double coverage like that, we're going to get some strange sounding phase cancellation. I'm not going to get into how all that works, but when you're sending the same signal or very similar signals back into your board 2 times, you're going to have some things that start canceling electrically, and that's not great. So that's why we use the 3-to-1 ratio. Do use the 3-to-1 ratio. That's very important in choir miking. And that leads to my other one, which is don't over mic your choir. The amount of churches that I have seen where a small choir has 5, 6, or a large choir has 15, 20 microphones on it. Microphones on stands in front of the front row. Microphones hanging from above. Goes back to our 3-to-1 ratio. When you over mic your choir, you're double covering everything. And what happens is that, first of all, you have so many open microphones that your feedback potential goes skyrocketing. And 2, you're gonna double cover a bunch of people, so you'll have weird phase cancellation issues, okay? So this is a big deal. Don't over mic your choir. For most churches, 2 well-placed microphones, and that's the key phrase, are sufficient for your choir. For some churches, 1 well-placed microphone is sufficient for your choir if it's a small choir. In our church, we had 3 rows of choir, and probably 30 or maybe 40 people in our choir. I used 2 microphones. 2 microphones was plenty to cover that group if they were placed properly. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So don't over mic your choir. Here's one. It's practical. Don't get mad at me. Do arrange your people so the loud ones aren't under the microphone. And this also goes for people who might be slightly out of tune. Don't say that out loud to your choir. But here's the thing. What happens is if you get that one soprano and she's got lots of good, strong volume, and you place her directly under that choir mic, she's going to end up singing a solo. So move her to a place where she is between the mics or on the outside edge, and that will help because a choir is a group of voices and we want it to blend. And sometimes to make it blend for the microphones, we have to move people around. Same thing with that one person who loves to sing and you let them in the choir, but they just can't hit notes without being flat or sharp. Move them to the periphery so that everybody else's voice balances out that wrong note and helps kind of mesh it all into one voice. So this is important. And don't feel bad about it, because while they may sound balanced in the room already, they might not sound balanced on the live stream. And so, that's not a big deal. Move people around until they are in comfortable spaces as far as the microphones are concerned. If you need to, put on a pair of headphones and move people around, or surreptitiously let your sound guy know what you're doing, okay? But you can be kind and you can do this at the same time, because that one person probably knows that they sing really loud. So, all right, another one. Don't put your choir in front of your speakers. Now, this really applies for churches that are doing maybe a Christmas choir, and the temptation with a kids choir is to put them all on the steps. And a lot of times what happens is that is a feedback zone for you. And so the kids choir, yes, they're all cute and they're all on the front steps, But if you mic them with a pencil condenser, there's a good chance that you're going to be in your speaker coverage area. Now, some of you, your speaker coverage doesn't extend onto your steps and you're in good shape. But you need to think about that. If you need to put little risers somewhere further back on the platform to get a better sound so you can have that kids' Christmas choir without, ringing and feedback, do that. But make that a consideration when you're setting up a temporary. Most choir lofts are in the back of their auditorium, so they don't have good main speaker coverage, which is great. That's what we want. We want to isolate that because that's a zone where we're going to turn that mic up really hot and the feedback potential is much, much higher. All right, so finally, my last do place your mics above your choir. Now, there's a lot of differing opinion about that, but for the most part, the opinion is that ideal choir mic placement is maybe about 6 inches to or a meter to half a meter in front of the face of the first row and about a meter to half a meter above the head of the top row. Now, why do we do that? Here's why. We're trying to get the microphone to avoid spotlighting one person. And the further out we get it, the more we make every person equidistant to the choir mic. I'm going to recommend Shure microphones, little primer on this. If you just search how to mic a choir, Shure, S-H-U-R-E, they have a really good kind of document or white paper on their website that shows you something about how choir miking is the best way to set up choir miking to make it work well. Here's the downside to the choir mics being that high. You're going to have to turn your gain up. And if your sound system is primed for feedback, you could end up with problems there. So my goal is to use the least amount of mics possible so we can get more gain before feedback and to get everybody to a similar distance from the choir mic with the placement of it. And so that is really the ideal. Now, when it comes down to practicality, sometimes we just can't do it without feedback or your system just won't allow it. And so you may have to move that mic in a little closer. But the best thing to do is point it down into your congregation or into your choir as much as possible. You don't want it pointing and picking up reflections from the back wall. You want it pointing down into your choir, rather. So those are my do's and don'ts for miking a choir. And I'm sure that some of you have done this, and maybe some of you have not done it before. But my advice to you is break out those condenser microphones and set them up and try different things. I think experimenting is how you learn things about audio. And people ask me, why are you considered a professional? That's because I've made all the mistakes before. I've done the dumb stuff, so learn from my pain. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you on the next one.